Well, who does not love a good old-fashioned game of cornhole? You know, the game's been around forever, and it's actually really easy to build. And today I'm going to show you just how to do it step by step. It's very, very simple. It starts with some basic supplies. Got these at the home center. This is a pre-cut piece of 2x4 plywood, pre-sanded pine. It's 3/4 of an inch thick. The sides and the legs are going to be made out of 1x4 pine, again, right off the shelf, plus some various pieces of hardware. Now, the first step that we need to do is to cut that hole. Okay, so we clamped this down so it doesn't move while we're drilling the hole. Speaking of the hole, there are some very strict guidelines as to how big the hole is and where it is on the board. It's going to have to be a 6-inch diameter hole. It's got to be located exactly 9 inches down from the top to the center of the hole, and then of course centered in between the sides of the board. Now, how do we drill this hole? Well, there are a few ways. We could take a protractor, set it to 3 inches, put it right on the center mark there, and make a nice circle, and then use our friend the jigsaw to cut it out. But I'm going to speed things up a little bit and use my 6-inch hole saw. Hole saws can be a little tricky. The key is to go steady and smooth. Okay, now it's time to build the frame. So first we'll measure the sides of the frame, which will be the full length of the plywood, 48 inches. Now for the end pieces, we'll need to cut them shorter, so to get that measurement, I'll just take 2 scrap pieces of material, which represents the thickness of both sides combined, and what remains is the length we need, 22.5. Now it's time to cut our pieces to length, and for that we head outside into the beautiful early spring weather and cut them on the miter saw. If you don't have a miter saw, you can use a handsaw or have the home center cut it for you. Okay, we've got our pieces cut. We've got our side pieces and our end pieces. Now the way we're going to attach this is simply with glue and screws. The thickness of our material is 3/4 of an inch thick. To make sure I drill through the side pieces in the exact center of the end pieces, I'm going to set my adjustable square to half that amount, which is 3/8 of an inch, and make a line so I know just where to fasten the screws. I'm going to be using a countersinking bit, and the reason is because I need to leave room to plug the hole with a wooden dowel because I really want a nice finished look. And you can see how the countersinking bit really drills down deep into the wood. I'm using exterior glue because this will be outside much of the time. For the fasteners, it's 1 5/8" exterior screws. Now you don't want to over tighten, just make sure they're nice and snug. The next step is to attach the top, and again I'll be using some exterior wood glue all along the top edge of the frame. And put the top on. Now I'm just making sure it's nice and flush all around. and then I'll make the same screw guidelines as before. Now, just as I did with the frame, I'm using the countersinking bit to pre-drill holes for the top and do the same process. I'm fastening 3 on the top and bottom and 4 on the sides. The next step is to plug the screw holes, and that's as simple as adding a bit of glue in the hole, tapping the dowel in, and cutting it as flush to the surface as you can. I'm using a pole saw, but you could really use any hand saw. And just work your way around all of the rest of the dowels. Then just sand them flush. I'm using 80 grit sandpaper on the orbital sander. And we'll follow the same procedure for the frame. I'm using a roundover bit on my handheld router. This is going to make sure the edges aren't sharp, and this bit will actually round over the edges just a little bit. The next step is to sand the whole top nice and smooth with some 220 grit sandpaper. Remember, we want the deck as smooth as possible so the bean bags can slide freely. And I'll finish it off with some final hand sanding. The next step is to make the legs. Now, how do we know how long to make the legs? Well, the rules state that the top of the deck of the board cannot be any higher off the ground than 12 inches. Well, we've got a 3/4 inch piece of plywood on the top, so 12 inches minus 3/4 is 11 1/4, so that's what we'll cut it to. And it's back outside to the miter saw to cut them to length. Now I'm only making 2 legs because the board needs to sit at an angle, so one side will rest on the ground and the other side on the legs. The next step is to actually round over the corners because I want these legs to fold out of the way. Now to make that round over, I actually found a coffee cup that seemed to fit just right. You could also use a roll of painter's tape, a can of paint, or even just sketch it out by hand. Then I'll just cut it out with a jigsaw, staying as close to the line as I can. And sand it smooth with some 80 grit sandpaper. The next step is to mark out the hole where our carriage bolts will go that will allow the legs to pivot. I'll measure about 2 inches down from the top and make a mark. Then make a mark in the center widthwise. The wood is 3.5 inches wide, so half that is 1 3/4 inches. Now I'm using a 3/4 inch spacer here just to give the leg a little extra room to pivot. So I'll clamp it in place and drill a hole through both the leg and the side to make room for the carriage bolt. If you don't know what a carriage bolt is, it has a smooth rounded head and a square neck, which prevents the bolt from being rotated. I'm using washers because the action will be much smoother than having one piece of wood rubbing up against the other piece of wood. Then it's a wing nut to finish it off. Then we just do the same for the other leg. The next step is the finish. So let's flip it over. Wipe it clean. And then apply a water-based polyurethane. It'll go on super easy with a foam brush and dry quickly. And I'm using a gloss finish, again, to make the surface as smooth as possible. As a little extra touch, I'm adding a HouseCalls decal, which goes on after the first coat has dried. Then a few more coats of finish, again to make the surface as smooth as possible so the beanbags will slide nice and easily. And we're ready to try it out. Now the rules state the boards need to be 27 feet apart, which is the pro level. I don't know why we're not doing the novice level, but nonetheless.
27 feet, right there.
All right.
Go ahead. Oh, you're the winner. Ooh.
Oh. Woo. Peter.
Oh, I thought I was going in.
Victorious. I knew I could do it. Proof. Right there. Right there.